everyone, Emily here and welcome to my kitchen. Cottage cheese has been having a little bit of a moment lately and I've made several cottage cheese recipes here on my channel, but I've never actually tried to make the cottage cheese itself. I was scrolling through TikTok today and I came across a really easy recipe for cottage cheese. And I can't believe that it's so simple to make. It's basically 2 ingredients and a very easy process. So I'm really curious to give this a try and see if it's worth it to make it in your own kitchen instead of buying it in the grocery store. So let's give this a try and see how it comes out. After I saw that video of someone making cottage cheese, I did a little research and all of the recipes are basically the same. It's just a proportion of milk to an acid and it's usually either vinegar or lemon juice. I'm gonna be using lemon juice today and a ½ gallon of milk. So you can just adjust the proportions based off of how much milk you're going to use. So the first step in this is to take your milk and heat this up. I'm going to pour this into a thick pot, so use something that has a thicker bottom to it, or it could cause the milk to more easily burn. And you're just gonna heat this up until it's a little bit foamy on top and not quite boiling. The temperature to check for, if you have a kitchen thermometer, 190 degrees Fahrenheit or 88 degrees Celsius. I've turned this up to a medium to medium high heat and I'm going to stir this, especially once the milk starts to get really warm, to prevent anything from sticking and burning to the bottom of the pan. And I am super excited about this recipe because we're not big milk drinkers here, but we buy it occasionally for some recipes. So it would be really nice to have something to do with the milk that I can actually use up what's left over and not just end up throwing it away. So I really hope that this is super easy and it comes out really good. As you're bringing this milk up to temperature, you want to make sure that you heat it really slowly, not only so that you don't burn the milk onto the bottom of the pan, but also a few of the recipes did note that if you heat the milk too rapidly, you can impact the curd size. So it really suggests going nice and slow with the heating process. You can probably speed this up for yourself if you get that milk up to room temperature before putting it into the pot, so you can leave it out for a little while if you know you're gonna make this later in the day. I'm starting with it at the refrigerated point, so this is going to take a little bit more time, but I'm just gonna be patient and continue to stir as I heat this up. All right, this has been going for a little while now, so I'm going to do another temperature check and see if it's ready to come off of the heat. It's pretty steamy, there's some little bubbles on the top, so all the signs that it's just about ready. All right, that was good timing. It's exactly at 190. So I'm gonna turn off the heat and remove this from the heat. And we're ready to add in the lemon juice or vinegar, depending on what you're doing. So for a full gallon of milk, and it really doesn't matter what kind you're using at this point, you would use either 3/4 of a cup of white vinegar or a ½ cup of lemon juice. And I'm doing a ½ gallon, so I'm gonna add in a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I'll just pour this right in. And give this a little stir. And this acid, I can already see it happening, is going to separate the curds from the whey in the milk. I'm just going to pop a lid onto this and give this 30 minutes on the counter and then come back to it and it'll be time to drain this. The milk and lemon juice mixture has been sitting for about 30 minutes, so we're ready to strain the curds out of the whey. I have a strainer here and I have a large bowl. So I'm going to place the strainer inside the bowl. That's going to catch any of the excess liquid. And then I'm going to line this with a clean tea towel. You could also use a cheesecloth. I am just going to place this on the inside here. And yes, this is clean. It's just a little stained from using it in the kitchen. That's what it's for. So I'm going to take a spoon, and I don't have a slotted spoon, that would be best, but I'm going to try and get as much of the liquid out as possible, and then place it in my lined colander. And at this point, try not to break up the curds too much. Leave them as whole as possible. I've scooped out as much of the curds as I can from the whey. They're pretty well separated at this point. So I'm just going to kind of cover this up with the tea towel and let that rest for about 20 minutes or so and let all of that excess whey drain out. And then we're gonna be ready to stir in a little bit of salt and our cottage cheese will basically be done. I am so excited to give this a try. This has been straining for about 20 minutes now, so I'm gonna go ahead and get out the remaining whey. You can see there's already quite a bit here in the bottom of this bowl, and that's not even counting what was left in the pot. So there's quite a bit of whey produced when you make this, and you can definitely save it. A few articles online recommend freezing it, and you can throw it into smoothies or soups, and it's pretty high protein and a good source of nutrients. So definitely worth saving if you can find a way to use it. I'm just going to pretty gently gather this up and squeeze out as much of the remaining liquid as I can. We have a nice little ball of cheese here, and at this point, this is when we're gonna season it, and if you want, you can make it a little bit more creamy. Now, I used whole milk. You could use whatever variety you want, as long as it's a dairy milk and not ultra pasteurized. You have to use a different recipe for plant-based milk, and if it's ultra pasteurized, because of that heating, it could affect the consistency of the final cheese product. So use whatever you want with all of that in mind. Now, if you want, you can add in a little bit of heavy cream at this point to make the end product just a little bit creamier. I am going to leave that out and just add in a little bit of salt. So for this amount, they recommend a half teaspoon salt. So I'll just do a few shakes of salt in there, and then you gently break it up. And this is going to determine the curd size of your cottage cheese. I'm not really sure if I did a good job or not, but this is looking like cottage cheese to me, and fairly small curds. It also looks really similar to ricotta, and I was very unsure if I was accidentally making ricotta instead of cottage cheese because it looked so similar. And at this point, I feel pretty confident that I have made cottage cheese, but the processes are super similar. So I'm just gonna give this a toss to kind of incorporate all of that salt, break up some of those larger pieces, and then we can give this a try. And I am really excited to try this. I have my mic back on, so hopefully all of our audio issues are solved now. And I have my cottage cheese, and I am super excited to try this out. Now, I was a little nervous when I started making this that I was totally gonna screw this up, but it actually came out looking like cottage cheese. So I'm excited to try it and see if it tastes just as good as it looks. So I'm gonna get a little spoonful here, and let's give this a try. That's really good. This is amazing. It tastes so much more fresh than store-bought cottage cheese, which definitely isn't a surprise because I just literally made this fresh, but it is super good. There is a little hint of lemon in here, but it's not overpowering. You can just kind of taste it. I think maybe it's because I know it's there, but I am glad that I used lemon as opposed to vinegar. Not a huge fan of vinegar, so if I could taste that in there, that might bother me a little bit. So something to keep in mind if you're also not a huge fan of vinegar, or maybe you're not a huge fan of lemon, you might want to opt for one or the other. Now, as far as the texture, it is a little bit softer than store-bought cottage cheese, but I think that might be just because this is still slightly warm. For best results, you should chill this before eating it. You can definitely eat it just fresh, but I think it might affect the texture just a little bit, and I think it might be a little bit more similar to store-bought cottage cheese consistency if you do refrigerate it first. This was so easy to make, and I'm definitely gonna be making this again. I think it's gonna be a great way to use up all of that extra milk that I buy for just a little bit in a recipe, then I have the rest just hanging around. This is gonna be a good way to use a lot of that up. I hope you give this a try. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon so you can get notified every time I post. As always, you can find the full recipe down in the description box below, along with links to all my social media pages so you can follow along for more cooking content. Hope to see you back here next time.